Jane Johnson alternate. And we have a full board, so we will not be seating anybody. Our agenda for the evening, approval of the minutes for August 22nd, 2024. And then on discussions and other businesses, we have we have proposed land acquisition map lot, let's see, 110 lot 70, seen that before. TIF district and ad hoc committee, capital improvement committee representation, contractor bay facilities discussion on definitions, multi-tenant application changes, site plan review, planning board training, and adjournment. Did I what? Oh, did I? I didn't call Victoria, did I? Oh, sorry, Victoria. And Victoria.
She's upset over here.
Sorry, wasn't on my list. This is an old list.
Victoria, don't throw it at him, really.
I'm gonna pencil you in right now, Victoria, okay, in case I use this list again. No, I mean, this is an old list. Okay, let's get on with the approval of the minutes of August 22nd, 2024. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve them.
Okay, motion by Mark to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Brandon. Is there any further discussion on the minutes? Any changes, any additions? And all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We're on to that. We don't need any type of a regional impact. So we'll go by that right down to discussions, other business, and the item A is proposed land acquisition. That's map 110 lot 70. That's the parcel down by the fire station that we did the lot line adjustment on probably a few meetings ago. So everyone's familiar with that. And what the selectmen are looking for is approval or recommendation by the planning board that go through, that the town accept that piece. So
Did we ever figure out what the billable
they will, the evaluation of it there, what they're gonna say it was worth.
yeah, well, what could we build it? How much?
Oh, it can be built on. No, not really, but doesn't have much to do with it right now.
Yeah.
Just all they're looking for is an approval or a recommendation that it be accepted, because the town isn't buying it, it's just they're donating it to the town. Yeah, and there would be room, yeah, to build on there, but who knows what it's gonna be used for in the future, but it will be there at least if the selectmen.
It would probably be a good training area for the fire department.
It might be a lot of woods down there though, so they have to clear a bunch of that out.
Teach them how to use the saws.
Well, yeah, sure, for their brush truck, right? So, any other discussion on that? If not, a motion would be in order to,
I'll make the motion to have the town accept that land swap.
okay, motion by Michael York to ask the selectmen to accept that piece of land. Is there a second? Let's see, I think.
He said it and I raised my hand, so.
Okay, so it's a tie there. So Richard said it, so I'll go to Richard. Richard seconded it. Is there any further discussion? And all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, that's out of the business. Bring us down to the TIF district and ad hoc committee. So we have that in our packets there. Little explanation of that, which is in a nutshell, possibly setting up a TIF district down here in West Swansea on a Route 10 corridor. Actually, basically the straight area of the Route 10 corridor there, where Marlowe's is and you know, there where Nick's restaurant is and that type of thing. So that, I guess I think they're looking for just a representative, I guess, from the planning board. That's the sounds of it. Right. Yeah. So we want to do that, and we can definitely talk about that too, what it is, and if it benefits the town, if it doesn't benefit the town, that'll be talked about in the committee. That's probably going to be formed to do that anyway. They'd set the boundaries of that as to what would be in it. And again, just to be brief about it, the TIF districts, like we had over there in North Swansea there, they're assessed when the district is formed. It's assessed at whatever value it is today. And then any improvements to it, like buildings put on it or additions to buildings, would be improvements to those properties. Any amount that is assessed over there from year to year goes towards paying off bonds to put in infrastructure and
Right.
water, sewer, roads, things like that. So
Just the difference is
it's
what goes
just the
to
difference, yeah,
them.
just the difference as I don't know if they're set up for maybe 15 years or something like that. I don't know, but however long the district goes, it's used for that amount of time to pay those bonds down.
Right.
And if there's extra money, they can use it to go back into the tax base if they don't need it all, you know.
Right. It's looking to do the same thing they did over in North Swansea on the Sapper Drive property.
It's exactly the same thing. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
tip district over there. Yeah, and they have an end, beginning and an end to them.
Right.
That was gonna be.
And that one's coming up, the end's coming soon.
It didn't really work out the way they had hoped it would work out because there weren't too many improvements done to that property. I mean, private improvements done to the
Right.
property. There are improvements done by the town to that property, but not really by too many businesses. There are now coming to the end of that, but they're thinking about the same thing over here anyways. And it sounds to me like the improvements they're talking about are, as I listed, the West Only Water Company, possibly purchasing that and a way to pay a bond down to purchase that company. And if that were to happen, there'd have to be improvements. There'd have to be a water tower somewhere, probably on this side of the road. Over Christian Hill, probably,
Not Cobble, but up on the
Christian Hill area.
Christian Hill Road.
Somewhere over
yes.
there, they'd probably have to be a water tower, or over where, I think it's across from River Bend there. That's a possible place, so they could put one up in there. But that would have to be done.
Thanks.
Yeah.
No way of going.
So above and beyond the purchase price of the water company, there'd be some big improvements going on there. They'd have to be in order to.
Well, I'm sure
expand
that
it
the septic system's gonna, that's gonna have to be improved too. As you build along, it's gotta get more capacity.
Oh, you're talking about the
Yeah,
the
sewer plant.
water treatment plant over there, wastewater treatment plant. Yeah, definitely. Well, that is at capacity now, pretty much so.
Right,
It's not at design capacity, but it's at workable capacity, or what they call load capacity.
right.
So, yeah, that'd have to be hand in hand with well, the treatment plant too. But with the treatment plant, as we are now in ordinance, there's no industrial waste accepted into that treatment plant. So that'd
Right.
only be residential into there unless the ordinance is changed. And you allow pre-treatment and then industrial into those plants, but the lagoon systems are kind of fragile when it comes to the industrial type of stuff in there, meaning you can kill the plant real easy. Activated sludge like Keene has or something like that, they've got stores of bacteria that they can pump. If some sets of bacteria gets killed off there, they can pump them from another tank, replenish them and keep on going, but a plant like that can't do that.
Hmm.
So if you kill the lagoon, you're in trouble. So
Is there room?
there is room. There was room set aside for expansion there. If they wanted to put another lagoon in, they probably wouldn't do that. They would probably either take out a lagoon and use some of the property to put in a more mechanized part of, you know, treatment. I don't know exactly what they would take, but there are mechanisms that make the treatment a little quicker. So they would probably do that instead of expand with a lagoon down, I guess. But all depending on the cost. The lagoon is cheaper to put in than that too, but you can treat a lot more mechanically on a smaller space than you can with a lagoon system. But yeah, that'd be another one of the ones that have to be, the water system and lagoon system probably have to be done first.
What about the West Swansea Water Company? Would they be able to expand and to handle the increased volume of work to open up and create an industrial area?
Yeah, and if they remain private, they probably wouldn't do it. Because the financing is so tough for private water companies to get, as opposed to if a municipality owns the system, then it opens up a big doorway for a lot of different ways to
Right.
fund that. But as a private company, they probably wouldn't do it.
It's not cost effective for a private company to do it.
No, it really isn't. Right now, they are at capacity, but again, they are not at so-called design capacity. They're at working capacity.
Right.
Meaning that they have that, I think it's a 5,000 gallon tank up there. So in order to add on to the system, they'd have to add more storage capacity, either another tank or a tower, something like that, because of their state regulations as to the flow that comes down through there for fire protection. So there's a lot of water up there, and it could sustain plenty, 3 times more than they're sustaining now. But it's just it's a matter of storage.
I believe they have 3 wells, but they're only using primarily 1.
Yeah, they're using 2 wells.
They already,
Yeah,
but they're very
2 wells
close.
are close. Yeah, they're gravel packed wells. They're about 80 feet deep. And each well is about 300 gallons a minute, something like that.
Mhm.
Then the other well is maybe 1/8 of a mile away at the most.
Is that the
And
one on California Street?
that's a
there?
California one, yeah. That was a 750 gallon a minute well by itself. And that one hasn't been used for a long time. But yeah, they could put that on there. I don't know if they'd ever even have to put that on there because of all the water that they've got with the other two wells. But if they wanted to expand now, they could use the capacity that they have now in those wells to do it. And it's just a matter of storage and of course adding on to the system or piping. But now, they've been starting on Homestead Woolen Mills building down here, cleaning it out. They haven't come to see us, obviously, we haven't seen them, but they're starting down there to clean it all out. So they'll be in at some point with a plan down there. And it'll be interesting to see what the state says about that, letting them hook onto that water system or not because of the capacity issue. So,
Residential use.
yeah, residential use, yeah. So we'll see what happens there.
Which is dumb, because wasn't that put in specifically for the mill back in the day?
Yes.
Yeah, it was, because it was not a private
along
water
with-
system. Yeah, it was a
along
water
with-
system for the mill. It was a manufacturing,
Yeah.
processed water.
And the sewage plant was too.
Well, no, the sewage plant wasn't put in for the mill at all, because
No?
that's why the mill had to move all their stuff up to Claremont, because Claremont had a sewer system up there, but this one town here didn't. And then I think it was about a year after I worked down the mill, then we moved all this, a lot of machinery moved up there. And anyways, about a year or maybe 2 years later, they put in a system down here, so.
So did he move everything back after?
Yeah,
No,
no.
we just let them build across the
No.
road, that's all.
But
We
they
revamped
wouldn't
the
let them
road.
go into it anyways, because it was gonna be a lagoon system and the pre-treatment you wouldn't have been able to pre-treat, really put it in there too much, I don't think. They've come a long ways with mills and dyeing process and that, and now
Yeah.
with vegetable dyes, things like that they have, you probably could easily put in a lagoon system, but not that. But anyway, yeah, they did own the water system, and then they turned it to domestic water system after that, the mill closed in. But they're gonna need it for fire protection down there, and they're gonna need it for domestic water down there, so. We'll see.
Well, Chair, you know so much about water and sewage stuff. Maybe you should be the representative.
On the TIF district there. If you prefer me to be, yeah, I live right here in town, yeah, and then
I'll make that nomination.
you will nominate and.
That
Okay, a
was a
nomination
good
by
idea,
Michael
Mark.
York,
I
that,
thought I was, yeah, perfect.
that's God's self, be the representative on the ad hoc committee for the TIF district in West Swansea, seconded by Mark, is that correct?
You don't mind
Or
having
who seconded it?
You're not here today.
What's that?
If you don't mind picking an alternate too, just in case.
We will,
Sure, we can do that.
Coverage.
yeah,
All right, I'll nominate Victoria, she's pretty smart.
Yeah.
So, too.
it's up to Victoria, you want to
Yeah.
accept it on,
I-
before we vote on it, we can still vote you in, but
Yeah.
It was for a backup, you said.
Just a backup.
Yeah.
Just a
Yeah.
backup. Yep.
But knowing Victoria, she'll want to go to the meetings,
Yeah,
because she'll
she
know what's
has to
going on.
go.
Yeah,
If you get the backup, you have to go to all the meetings.
I don't know if we need a backup, but I'm just doing this just in case.
just in case.
I mean, I think it's really interesting and important work. I got these cows, right? I just don't know if I can make.
Totally, I don't know if we need a backup.
we don't have to nominate one now, we can just
Yeah.
nominate the representative,
Yeah.
and we'll see if we need one later, and the board can
Yeah.
decide.
I
We
would,
can do that.
I would love to do it.
If we need a backup, we'll bring it up.
All right,
So Mark, did you second that?
Actually, I don't know, I think everybody seconded it.
Yeah.
You have it in a second, okay, then all those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye, all those opposed? Okay, I'll be your rep on that.
You didn't oppose it?
No, I didn't oppose it. So
It just made sense to me.
now we go to the Capital Improvements Committee, and we're represented. Right. Mike-
Yes, I'll serve on
Mike,
it
you still-
again.
want to nominate Mike for it.
Yes, I want to be able to spend everybody's money.
So are you fine with that?
Yes, I am.
Okay, then you nominated Mike, okay, you make the motion then.
I'll make the motion to nominate Mike.
Okay, motion by Brandon to nominate Mike York to represent us on the Capital Improvements Committee. Is there a second? Seconded by Richard. Is there any further discussion?
Little bit. This, can you guys report back to us? on
Sure.
this regular basis?
Sure.
Yeah.
It would really
Sure,
help
I-
us.
And if we forget.
I
bring it
even,
up at the
I even
meeting.
got,
Yeah.
I've even got the stuff from last year still. So if you wanted information.
Little
on that,
late
I've got
now.
it too. No, it's not, because a lot of this stuff is gonna be forwarded and we're just gonna update it, It's basically what we do.
Just, yeah, just the high points.
Oh, sure,
where it's
sure.
going.
Yeah.
It's good for us to know.
Yeah,
No
how about
problem.
After every meeting. I mean, you guys have meeting, you start meeting in the.
Yeah, we meet right through, usually right through October, because we have to get our recommendations to the select board so they can publish everything and have hearings and stuff like that.
And how often do you usually meet?
I think Bev, what we bought, once a week in October, right? Yeah,
Sometimes
yeah. And I gotta say that being on it last year, Steve, the chairman, does one heck of a job. He knows his numbers cold.
He does, I know.
Yes, he
I've been
does.
On boards with him before, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely
he
does.
does a great job.
what they do is they invite each department head to come
Yeah.
to a meeting and discuss what their needs are in terms of large capital expenses. They ask the department head, well, can you wait for until, 2027, or do you need this by 2026? And by doing that, they are able to plot out, expenditures that can over time, without raising taxes a huge amount. The expenses are plotted out over time, but that they get all of that data from
Yeah.
the departments.
Department heads, right? And sometimes we even talk into spending a little money. Sometimes we talk to spend the less money. Sometimes we say, okay, we gotta move this back because of the budget. But we're trying to be responsible with spending the taxpayers' money. We don't make the final determination. We just do recommendations to the select board. And I believe those meetings are still open to the public.
Yes.
I don't
Should be.
think any
So why
government,
not?
yeah,
So, yeah, if you bring us up to date after every. couple
I
meetings or
shall
something
do
like
that, yes.
I'll try and do the same, and
And-
if not, just remind us, anybody, and then we will bring it.
And while we're on that subject of
Wait a
committees.
second, we got a motion on the
Oh,
floor.
okay,
Seconded, we got a motion by Brandon, seconded by Richard to nominate Michael York for our capital improvement program. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, we'll be on that. So what were you gonna say?
payback. I was gonna say, we're talking about committees that Scott, myself and Mark are on the fire advisory board committee. Those things are also open, so we would appreciate you coming up and talking to us to what you think we should have.
Well, we can
Okay.
talk right here and we can bring it to the
Right,
committee.
right.
Because, yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say is that anybody here that wants to give us feedback to bring back to the committee, they're more than welcome.
Yeah.
But we've only had one person show up at one of the hearings, so.
More than we
Always
got
here.
tonight.
Huh?
More than we have tonight.
Well, we had one other person besides this gentleman.
So, yeah, on that fire committee, it's the Fire Station Advisory Committee, I think is the official name of that
Yes.
committee. So where we're at now is that, let's see, I think we either narrowed it down
To the one site, yeah.
to that one site, which is was it 321, I think it's.
Yes, it's 321.
Three
You're right.
twenty-one Old Homestead Highway, which is a piece of land that the town bought several years ago to put a fire station on. So there were several different areas that the committee was thinking about. Narrowed it down and voted on that one. That one's going to be the one that the group is gonna focus on. So that's the same. So that brings it to the actual fire station itself. And the change in that kind of has to be in size. Because if, for instance, if we were seeing that as a site plan, as a planning board, and we had denied it, like the town denied it, like last year, they couldn't bring it up to us by statute, even up to us, unless there are substantial changes. And it's kind of something like that, you don't bring the same exact plan up to the town because
They just rejected it again.
Trueless, yeah, you aren't gonna go anywhere, so if there's a substantial change, then you bring it up. So the land is not a change, so that leaves the station, so we're sizing the station down. Is what we're doing as the substantial change, which hopefully would bring the price tag down. Again, which is a big sticking part, I'm pretty sure in the whole thing. One thing was that I think a lot of people figured it was too much, they didn't need all this stuff, we were at a meeting, I think last night there, and it looks like there was a movie theater in there with a conference room. It was a lot in there. So. If we had seen it, just a second, if we had seen it in the planning board here. We'd probably have to figure a substantial change was like 50% reduction, that would be a substantial change. A third reduction, I don't know, a quarter of a reduction probably wouldn't be a substantial change. From the planning board point of view, I don't think. If somebody came in, site plan like that, so. I think we're gonna end up with something like about a third of the building reduced. It's back and forth, we have some design, I did up a drawing of it, we had a meeting last night, we have a small group that met for sizing it down and seeing what we can fit in there, so. You've still got the two double bays like everyone saw in that whole plan there, and they're back-to-back engines in there, you can get on either side. And then on the other side, where the offices, things are going to be, that we're figuring for a second floor up in there, so it'd be, instead of a step in the roof like we saw in the last drawing, it would be just one straight roof across, down, and about a third of the building missing. And then whatever can fit in there and what they need, will be put into that. So it looks like maybe 2 offices instead of the 3 offices. No regular work area, no big conference room, a small area there where they can have meetings and things. And then, of course, the upstairs part is kind of just excess space or future development or future needs for the fire department. Because another thing coming up in the meetings there is that they're running out of volunteers. And they can't get volunteers, they can't entice anyone to volunteer, and they think it's because that for the, I think it's the firefighter 1,
Right,
grade 1,
Right.
that the training is exactly the same for the part-time guys, the volunteer guys, as it is for the guys that get paid like up to Keene and any other fire station that pays them. So they figure that nobody's going into that because they do all that training for volunteering when they can do all the training and get a job that way. So that's what they figure.
yeah. And the other issue in Swansea is the fact we have maybe 10 at the most active firemen.
Yeah, there aren't that many
No.
anymore, right? It's going down and down, and down, but
And a fire station is like, you don't really want to pay for it, sort of like insurance until you need it. Then you want it.
Elevated to that strength.
it is, yeah, we've,
Get down the road expense.
well, we've put one in the drawing that we had last night. We did last night, we put one in there. So it's wise to do that. Like we have a lift right here. It doesn't have to be that very big, but it's wise to do that.
Yeah, and we did also keep the 10-foot doors in there, correct?
The doors exactly, didn't change anything in the bays.
Yeah.
We put an extra set of stairways in the personnel part of it, so you can get to that upstairs part both ways and have fire and exit both ways, and an elevator or a lift in through there.
So everybody will understand too, right over here was a ladder truck. If you watch that ladder truck back in there and look at it, there's maybe a 1/2 inch to 1 inch clearance. So the fire trucks.
It's tight, but they built it that way. I mean, they put that on there so they could put that truck in there.
That's exactly right.
Living across the street, I've never once heard him hit the building with it.
And
No,
that's
they've got
not
the
only
good-
the ceiling, when they shut the door.
Right.
Richard,
also
what were you gonna say? You had something to say, Richard.
Your new proposal, then you're taking away the thought of a police department being in there.
Yeah, it's strictly,
Fire.
it's strictly a satellite fire station. If the fire department, they want to make it into their main fire station, that's up to them. This is just a replacement for station number 2. And that's
Right.
it.
The other thing is, will it be a rear entrance for the trucks? Meaning when they come back, they go around the back and come forward.
Yeah, there will be. The way it's set up is it's like, I don't know, 88 feet long, probably that way. And there are 2 doors on either end of it, and the trucks are like back to back, so they're heading out both sides of it, like that, so they can get out either way. And it'll fit 4 pieces of equipment in there.
And we decided to, and plan to bring the station forward a little bit.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is if we decrease the size of the station, we can move it forward on the plot and not maybe spend so much in filling that sloped off area and land in the back of it there, and save some money and fill with that.
You know where your seat road.
Oh, probably for a meeting thing, but there won't be as much pavement.
Right there.
If anybody's interested in going to our next meetings on Monday at, right here.
What
at,
time? 5 or 6?
5 o'clock.
5.
Yeah, 5, and by then we'll have another drawing, because last night, I think it was Mike of the fire department there, he had a silhouette or a small scale drawing of what he wanted on there, what he figured should be in there. And again, they kept asking me, but I don't care how it's configured, because I'm not gonna be using it, those guys are gonna be using it. But it was 10 feet longer or 10 feet wider than the one that cuts a third off of the building. So I'm gonna draw one up that way with the extra 10 feet on it there, and we're gonna look at it at our committee meeting on Monday and decide what, because it's visual too, you know, when we all look at the plans here, it's a lot visual as to how it strikes you. And if it looks like about the same size as the other fire station was, it's probably, people are just saying, oh, I don't know what that is, you know, but has to look a little different too, so. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna decide which one to go with. Then the plan is to bring that to the selectmen to see if they will allow a little bit of money to bring it to the architect that, excuse me, drew it in the first place. And if she can render it down and make sure that code and everything matches for it, or the code fits, then we can get a basic cost analysis as to what it might cost. And from maybe several different bidders rather than just one. I think they said they had several different bidders and DEW was the cheapest. But I know when we had bidders here, when we did this building, DEW was most expensive. So we'll see how that goes.
Question.
Yep.
So the size reduction to the building, that's taking into account that this reduction will still be able to fit enough apparatuses for the additional wall, the housing.
Yeah, we aren't touching the base for the fire trucks at all. We're just reducing the personnel part of it there.
Oh.
And, you know, they'll have to squeeze in, or they can put in what they need to put in there and make use of the space how they want to make use of it, but it's just basically it's to cut the square footage down, to get the price down, move the building forward, get that land cost down.
And the way we're trying to build it is for, if in the future, we could expand if we need so.
It'll be expandable, yeah,
Right.
right. But if it's 2 floors over the personnel part, they've ended up with extra space upstairs there, so if they need it for training or whatever they're gonna be doing there, it's up to them again, if they want to do that. And then again, it was up to them whether they wanted to make that their main fire station or not, or it will be.
Essentially, we want to make sure it meets the needs.
Right.
We reduce the cost. And we'll be discussing how do we market it. Because, you know, it's failed numerous times. We're in the same location. But any other location involved with the transaction that was gonna delay it another year, and actually probably cost more money. So
Yeah,
that's why we're back on this 5-acre lot, which is, you know.
and in
sufficient.
fact, it's probably a safety thing with the fact that most of our growth is right over there in North Swansea with the 2 main projects. So it makes sense to have it a little bit closer, I think.
We've also gone with a wood frame building. Like the EMS building over here, maybe not designed like that, but that's a wood frame building over there. Because it was a metal building, and in discussions with DEW, they said that the metal frame buildings are pretty much designed and built, you know, factory wise. When you go changing things in there, that's when you get the custom metal building, and that's when it adds a whole bunch of costs to it.
Right.
So, and the stick frame building can be built by more than people that specialize in metal frame buildings, so it might be cheaper that way, and the stick building itself is gonna be a little cheaper, so bringing costs down that way too.
Is it gonna be flat roof or pitch roof?
It'll probably be pitched. That has been brought up, but if it's a stick frame building in Swanzey, it'll probably be pitched.
I think pitch
Yeah.
might have a better chance.
And with trusses, yeah, and yeah, the better chance of passing. You think, yeah, if
The
it's,
appearance factor.
yeah, they did a good job over that EMS building.
Mhm.
It looks
Yeah.
nice in there. So we have a different architect. That guy was the one that was our architect for here.
Hmm.
So that's where we're at with that. And we'll let you know how it goes.
Make sure the roof matches every other roof around. Yeah.
That's
There's
what.
somebody over there.
Do you think someone will show up at our
I
meeting?
think somebody might show
My-
up.
He's a quick study.
So
Yeah, is there anything that anybody here wants us to bring forward to that committee? You can think of concerns?
The only other thing I would think of, but I'm sure it's already been approached, is the FAA glide path. Rule.
Oh, yeah.
How high you're going to be with that roof. But I think you're going to be still right off the edge of the end of the runway. The length of it.
Yeah. Near the end.
And so you'd have to be concerned with that.
we aren't right in the glide slope though for 02. If that's right, I mean, 02 runs like this.
North south.
Yeah,
Where Jason.
and then this is right to the, in the,
To the right.
yep, it's not right really in the glide slope, but it's in the tapered. If you can imagine it,
The cone going out.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
where that is in.
Is there a navigation? easement? That's another question. So,
A navigation easement for that property? Not that I'm aware of. No, I don't think so.
Actually, the former owners of the land, Ferguson, they had to take down all their pine pine trees.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, those pines are
Took
like
all
a
those
hundred
down.
feet tall.
That's
Oh,
why-
that's what you mean, an FAA easement for that, yeah. Well, there is, yeah, for that, but our 45 foot, this is probably only gonna be 45 feet, but our 45 foot. Footprint would probably fit in there, but I don't think that would go into that slope. We have in our zoning a picture of that slope. Well, maybe it's in our small one here, but we have them over the town hall that shows that glide slope and shows everything there.
If we have to, we'll go to a flat roof.
Because of that, yeah, but I don't think so. I think we'll be good with that height wise there.
Just
We
got
won't know,
one story to.
yeah.
Well, put a cellar hole in it, make the chief's office down in the cellar hole.
Well, we see how far we got a long ways to go.
If anybody's got any ideas on how we can publicize this and then educate the public, we would welcome that information.
Brings us to item D. Contractor bay facilities, discussion and definition. So let's see. I was thinking about this, the contractor bay, we've been talking about it for a while there. And it seems almost as if we're approving a building style and not a use. The planning board is about approving uses to land use, and not necessarily a building style. If a building is put up, regardless of what style it is, if it fits on the property, meets all the setback requirements, height requirements, everything else, then the building can be there, and it's up to the planning board to see if the use is appropriate for that building and in that zone. So if we go, putting a use as a contractor bay, we'd have to designate what that building actually is, that it's a bay, and then we'd be telling them how to build a building there, which we have no business doing. We do have regulating what goes in that building. For instance, the Base Hill Road went down here, which didn't go in, not yet anyway. That building fit on that site, and they still could have put that building up down there, and it just would have been a matter of what uses could go in there for that business zone that it was in. But they didn't decide to build it because of the whole hoopla about it. But again, a building is a building and the use is a use. We approve different uses for different buildings a lot on this board here. And again, telling them what kind of a building to build probably isn't under our purview to do.
Well, quick note on that, there's an additional document that I handed out to everybody. With a proposed definition highlighted in the yellow. And that would be called mixed use development. Nice and broad, covers a lot of different possible structures that could go up in whatever districts we decide is appropriate, but it's a lot less limiting, and I'm hoping it more easily attracts developers to build Swanzey. If people see contractor bay facility, I have a feeling that they're gonna be deterred by how limited that seems. And so I think if we're gonna do this, I think we should be broad. I think it's a good definition that covers a lot of different uses. And I think that's where staff landed, and I put it on the paper so you guys can discuss it. Mark and Victoria also had an attachment that I'm sure we would like to discuss. But I think staff kind of got away from that. The more we researched this topic, the more we saw what other municipalities had success with. More municipalities have more success with going multi-use definition. You can't really define these things as a contractor, anything, because it's just gonna put too many limits on it right off the gate. And I think we're gonna be revisiting the definition again in five-ish years, if we do that. So I'd rather just do it once, call it a day. So hoping we can discuss it.
Okay, if we're not, as Scott was saying, able to kind of design what's going in to a place, where is our common sense as to the neighborhood and responsibilities that we have to protect the area and its design? And what I'm kind of thinking about is, okay, we have a quarter down 12, down Route 10. And we've somewhat protected North Swansea Route 32. But in looking at these areas, these three different areas. West Swansea was, and I guess not any longer, but a mill town. Route 10 through, excuse me, Route 12 through its evolution and everything is basically large business, etc. There used to be a railhead for companies there in use. And North Swansea has always been a community of housing and residential. And that goes back into the 20s of the last century. And what we're looking at or saying is, okay, you have a piece of land here and you can take and do whatever you want to it, irregardless of what is already there in the town, what the area looks like. And I don't think that that's what the people really want. I think, I think we should be a little more cognizant of what we're going to propose to put in there and what is there already, and whether it meshes.
Right, and that's not quite what the definition says. I wanted to call out permitted. So in the definition, it does say 2 or more different permitted uses. And so if those uses aren't already permitted in that zone districts. I mean, you're not gonna be able to have. Uses that aren't already permitted in the districts. In the development. I think the thought with this. Is to more clarify what's going to be built there. So if somebody comes in with a proposal for a mixed use development. I mean, we already have the mill is one of this. The mill is a prime example of this. We have possibly residential going in to the part that's unoccupied now. You have a recreational facility and you have different multi-tenant spaces. And it's a prime example of what open spaces can look like. Right.
Yep, it would be,
Yeah.
So in that regard.
Yeah, so as a planning board, this is going off of what's in that little white book right there. It's way less about the design of these buildings and like what's actually going in them, and more so about maturing the ordinance in defining what's supposed to be in all these different districts. And then once the site plan comes to us, or to you guys, this table. Then, you figure out how to manipulate it a little bit so that it fits that rural character, if you will, and goes off of the ordinance as well.
That's primarily what we do and have been doing and will continue to do, and with things like the setbacks, one thing, height for another thing, and for landscaping for another thing, and fences and berms and those types of things that are written in our ordinance to protect the residential uses from the industrial or business type uses are already in there. But I know you're saying that those businesses don't fit in there, but the only way to change that is to change the use or allowable use in that zone. And again, whatever zone it is, the person here might be happy with that, but a person here that owns that piece of property that thought of maybe putting in a small business or something isn't happy with that. And they both pay taxes. One gets what they want, the other one doesn't get what they want. So there's a balancing act that the planning board has to do.
Right.
Dave?
I have a problem with some of the language. Okay, anytime I see, but not limited to,
Steve, you always have a problem with some of that language there. Which one is it this
It
time?
looks like you're looking at the definition for the zone district.
Yeah.
No, he's reading the one in yellow.
I mean, really,
Yep,
Okay.
including, but not limited to.
I mean, it's saying the same thing. It says use of-
It does not say that residential, office, retail, recreation, light industrial. And then my next problem is other miscellaneous uses.
that's intended to give you guys flexibility when reviewing supplements, which I think is important.
What is a miscellaneous use?
Something that's not listed there. Exactly.
Okay, no, go back to it.
But it still has to go to what is permitted in that zone. It can't be something that is not permitted in the zone. No, but the ordinance says that. This doesn't have to say that, but the ordinance does say if it's listed as a permitted use in that zone, then you can do it. If it's not, you can't do it regardless of what that definition is.
We're not gonna be able to list all the possibilities. So
Miscellaneous use
we can change that one.
is too broad.
We could say or other use.
What about synonymous?
Yeah, however you guys wanna phrase it, it's important, otherwise it's just gonna say et cetera.
How about just other permitted uses?
Yeah,
Because that's what it's gonna be.
That's fine.
Other
too.
permitted uses in the zone. Yeah, okay, other permitted uses.
It is implied because we do say permitted uses.
Exactly, yeah.
Earlier in the definition, so I would push back against it, but if that's what you guys would like to see, then more than that.
So are we saying? We should. Use mixed use as opposed to contractor bay, because the reason we got the contractor bay is because somebody came forward with a plan for a contractor bay.
Yeah.
Right? And, you know, they pretty much defined them how they like them to, wanted them to be defined,
Yep.
and we didn't necessarily agree.
But again, it all boils down to the uses there, though.
It really
Right?
does.
I mean, not the building itself, contractor bay itself, but the uses
Yeah.
inside of there, and they would change.
I like where we started. I think contractor based facilities, it's a very nice sounding phrase. But I think it puts too many limits on somebody who owns land in the city. I mean. You could put all of these uses in a contractor bay facility, what we were gonna call it. But just the phrase contractor bay, it just made it a bit too.
Precise, right? Specific.
A bit too specific, again, I'm happy, this is why we brought up, because I know you guys have document. You guys wanna talk more about your attachment.
Well, what I'd like to do before we do that is go up to a higher level for a moment, and that is that. We certainly want to do what we can to make it possible for people to develop their land as is appropriate, but I feel like we also have a responsibility as a board to make sure that we're keeping an eye on surrounding uses. You know, the effect, as Richard was saying, the effect on the neighborhood, but also we're charged with health and safety kinds of issues, so we have to think about, you know, is it appropriate for certain uses to be happening on the same lot? And just to give a concrete example of that, when Mark and I were talking, we started thinking, well, if we're talking about, and I don't want to get, you know, buried in the idea of contractor based facilities, but one of the thoughts we had was that our original vision was that these would be places where contractors would be, you know, coming in, dropping off their stuff, picking up their vans, leaving. But there wouldn't be retail uses at the same time, because those are very different kind of, you know, if you've got lots of people stopping, you need a certain amount of parking for people to come in and, you know, shop somehow. That there are just some uses that aren't necessary. We need to evaluate the site plan in a different way, depending on what's happened there, you know, so. If it's gonna be a place where contractors are storing lots of stuff, and it's sort of like a glorified self-storage situation, except they're actually maybe fabricating stuff there too. Do we really wanna have the intensity of use of, you know, me bringing in all my, you know, my chainsaws and my lawnmowers and all that stuff to get fixed? You know, which is, it's a very different kind of circulation pattern, it's a different kind of intensity. So, that's where I think if we're going to, this kind of reminds me of the old planned unit development, remember those back in the day? It kind of makes me think of that where the entire site is developed as a whole, sort of like a little mini
Yeah.
commercial area
Yep.
that also has residential built into it.
Yeah, I think the difference there is planned unit development, it sets different setbacks and building standards in general.
Yeah.
That's not quite what we're doing here, but it does, yeah.
Having so many different uses, but the idea at that time is that you kind of lock into you have an idea what the big picture is. It's not sort of, add something else on and add something else on. It's a very sort of cohesive approach to developing the parcel as a whole.
Yeah.
Which feels really different from what we were talking about with these contractor made facilities. Feels, so just a thought.
Stefan,
So. I won't use an example of where I'm from, because population wise is completely different, density wise, everything. But like, if we're talking about proximity and how things might work, because I believe that this definition, it makes a space for a case by case basis. So like, if we're talking about proximity, like, if you take Main Street, Keene, you have that garage, I forget what the garage is called, but you have that garage. You have a bar,
City Tire.
City Tire. Then you have a flower shop, tattoo shop. That's all within a minute of walking. So like, it's very much so case by case, because like, that works, and some of those buildings right on Main Street, they do have dwellings above them. So I feel as though this.
That burnt down was like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So, and again, case by case, but I feel like this definition kind of gives space to have that case by case.
So devil's advocate, let's say that, if it's this wide open and say, something is presented to us that, we really don't feel, how do we screen out inappropriate uses? Because this is basically do whatever you want to do, and there are going to be situations where it's just not sensible.
And there's a fairness to the applicant to understand that, reading our regulations before they even go further to prepare to come to the board.
And I think that maybe a way to imagine that would be to pretend that we're an attorney who's representing an unhappy next door neighbor. Okay, so what would our case be? How would we manage that?
if we have a good case, if we have good reason to deny something, then we're good. But if
But
the
there's
board
something
doesn't-
in this that,
It can't be in that. It can't be in the definition. It has to be in the RSA as a good reason, like through safety, which you brought up, safety and things like that. To deny an application. It has to be, a solid foundation of reasoning behind denying it. Steve.
I think changing miscellaneous to permitted resolves some of the problems.
I don't think Victoria's talking about something different there, I think, as to how it fits in as to one business operating right alongside of another business that might not fit. Isn't that what you're talking about, Victoria?
for example, with to use no specific, but a contractor storage bay facility. I felt like, because I didn't know who was going into it, I didn't know how. What the best how to evaluate the layout of the buildings and the circulation and the parking. I just didn't feel like I had any standards that I could measure that against. And it feels even more, that issue feels even greater with, a definition for a mixed use development that is as wide open as this, how do I just don't know how to do a good job,
Well,
reviewing a site.
It does have to be on a second, it does kind of have to be on a case by case basis, like the one over here in West Swansea, is it up to
California Street.
California Street?
Yeah.
That's this type of a thing.
Oh,
And we approve
Yep.
buildings without anybody going in there. We just approved the building for a mixed use in there.
Okay.
And they had a site plan and that was individual one and we looked at it as it was pertaining to that area there. And we'd be doing the same to any other one at all, I think like that.
So let's say we get an application for a contractor storage bay facility, would we use this definition to review it?
Oh, we would use our site plan regulations and what's allowed in that zone to review it. And, they would tell us if they told us what was going in there. Then you could review it for traffic and those types of things. But if you can't, and they build it and they want something to go in there that doesn't have enough parking or something like that, then that's on them. That's, they've done it to themselves. Something else has to go in there that would fit what they've limited themselves to. The planning board didn't limit them. I think, Richard, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether or not. If we do change miscellaneous or if you leave it in there. What RSAs would back us up
For what?
for a denial of something?
If it didn't fit.
No,
zoning,
the-
no, I'm just saying,
The
Is it
denial
just-
would have to be that it didn't fit our zoning. Specifically our zoning, something like that, or that it was unsafe, something in that area there. But you just can't deny it because
You don't
you
like
don't like the design.
you know, but if it comes in, the person comes in, so else it says miscellaneous.
Yeah.
This is my miscellaneous use.
And then planning board would look at it and say, well, this use isn't in our zoning, you can't use it in that zone, so that one's out, or this one is allowed in that zone, so that one's in. You know, it all falls under what our zoning is, not necessarily what that definition is.
If we get into the challenge,
You don't, it's either allowed or it isn't, or if there's a challenge like the, what was it, service industry or service establishment over here, then the challenge goes to the ZBA. To interpret it. But if it's an allowable use, they can do it. Let's see,
A builder and us can design and improve a building for knowing what the use is going to be. However, in 3 years, that may
exactly,
go bust, and
Yeah.
we have designed and built or authorized building. A building that is not functional for what the use is.
for that use that it came under a site plan review for.
It's,
And that happens a lot here too, like a tire warehouse down there, that building's not a warehouse anymore, it's, well, they have a couple of different businesses down there now, but. Again, they just come into the planning board and say, we want to use this building for such and such, and the planning board decides whether they have enough parking, enough landscaping, enough whatever they in the site.
Well, I think. This is a great conversation, thank you all for participating, I really appreciate it. I understand the pushback, I very much expected it. We already have a few of these properties. And I think what this is doing is this is just telling us. What zoning do we want our mixed use development? Potentially. To go. So we're not doing it yet, we're gonna do it after this, but. When we decide what zones we want this to go in. That'll tell Swanzey where we want mixed use developments to happen, right? These aren't gonna be all around town, they're gonna be in very specific parts of town. And we do already have a few.
So that's helpful, because one of the things I'm thinking of is a recently approved application for a landscaping business that also had some, I think, wasn't it?
Apartments or something
It has-
down
but it's
there,
not
right?
apartment,
Yep.
right? So that's exactly what this
Yes.
is, right?
And that's in the exact right part of town, yeah.
So why I mean, maybe I'm just overthinking this, I don't know, but why do we need this definition?
You're not overthinking it,
Okay.
because the more and more I think about it. That's my one question.
Yeah.
Is A, do we need this?
Yeah.
And B, if we don't need this, then what action do we take?
But
I don't see why we even need this if we're
We
already
might.
permitting bit by, these mixed.
we are, but we
Okay,
might need
it's
it.
permitted.
And it goes to what Adam was saying about. If we know we don't want mixed use in, we'll say, business one up there or wherever the heck, then we don't put it as an allowable use in there. If we never have the definition at all, then. You could probably put it anywhere, if it went in case by case, but you can say where it's not going.
Okay, but when would we ever turn? When would we ever,
So it's.
Go ahead.
Well,
yeah, it's making a great.
Yeah.
well, a case in point is up there on West Street Extension where they wanted to put a repair shop for bikes up there. That'd be a mixed use if you did it, because that's rural agriculture.
One other
We
thing,
wouldn't want it to blow up.
this is probably gonna take the place of our multi-tenant facility.
Right.
Because we're gonna phase that out of there, and this is gonna be about what that is.
Yeah. In a lot of municipalities. Mixed uses itself is not a use. For example, I can think of, at least it does in larger municipalities that have mixed use, small and mixed use large, but they're whole zones. Eventually, maybe, I don't know if something needs it, but this at least outlines where we think mixed uses should go. And because we're not gonna rename all of our zones right now, right this year, that's not gonna happen this year. But this might lay a foundation for that in the future possibly. I don't wanna go ahead of this.
See,
Rather than try to build a picture that will apply to every zoning district. Why don't we simply, not simply, but amend the uses in whatever districts we choose? No mixed use shall be allowed.
you
Which
can,
would
you can do this, you can do that, that's the same thing.
Solve this problem and clarify in whatever districts we want to put it into a prohibition against mixed use.
The problem with that, I will say, is that you're always allowed to have accessory uses. So if you're in a residence district, you're always allowed to have a home-based business. There are some uses by right that you are allowed to, that doesn't necessarily classify you as a mixed use. Mixed use more so refers to development having commercial and industrial. Or residential and retail. That's more so what mixed use means,
But
but
that type of language that I suggested can be applied to only the districts you were just talking about, and not to residential where you have accessory uses. So, you know, this would this would be a catch-all that we're trying to fit everything into. And we really need separate buckets.
Yeah, so I think one thing that we have to consider is. We take any district and say, look, well, these are all the things that are allowed in that district. We want to allow all those things in a single building. And the answer is probably not. Because, you know, once again, the safety factor comes up, right? You don't want a manufacturing or chance of something, you know, blowing causing some catastrophic event, you know, and above that, people are living, right? We have to be smart about it.
Yeah, the fire department generally, yeah, if they say no, then it's a no. Regardless what the planning board says, but right, yeah, those safety issues are always there, and that is a way, you know, if the
Just an
planning board
example.
wants to deny it on a safety issue, that is. Something you can deny on, but you can't just deny on anything.
You know the property they built, the last storage units by the gas company?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now what if that guy didn't wanna build that? What if he wanted to build like a 100-foot long concrete block building, but divide it up? Would he be allowed to do that there?
If it fits the setbacks and every other part of the zoning and
And
the
that
building
zoning
code,
there is commercial,
then yeah, then you can build it there.
so.
Now, it depends on what the use would be though, because he'd be back before the planning board. To decide what he wants to put in there. If it's not an allowable use or the planning board has a safety issue with it, then it doesn't go in.
But if he builds the building as speculation.
Mhm.
And then he gets a tenant, say, a sound studio wants to move in, but they only want 20 feet and the 30-foot deep of the building. Next guy comes along, but he's a shipping guy.
Yeah.
He could do that.
If it's an allowable use there, then
Allowable
you could,
use.
and if it meets code, you know, if the fire department has a problem with it, then there's a problem with it. But the planning board just takes a look at it as to, you know, if you have the parking for that business, if you
Mhm.
didn't allow enough parking for, we'll say they want to put a retail in there eventually. Wasn't enough parking, you either have to tear something down or get a variance or something like that if it didn't fit. The planning board would decide on that. That criteria. Right. And that would be, yeah, it would be a mixed use, it's like what we're talking about.
Instead of calling it a contractor bay.
Yeah, it would just be a mixed use building, and we have a bunch of.
Mixed use building.
yeah,
Better definition, I think.
I think it is too, you know, it's a broader definition. But again, we can restrict it.
yeah, and Victoria brought up such a good point, because I was thinking about that as I was writing this in. You know, maybe in the future, we don't need this definition, but I think now it helps a little bit. That's something that we can talk about, certainly. But I don't know where the thoughts are, where the temperature.
And if hearing is, you're talking about uses, right? And I wonder if we don't need to strengthen our definitions of uses, because I know what residential means, I know what office means, I know what retail. Service, I mean, I'd love to define service, I don't.
We need to.
Well, we're going to, right?
Yeah,
So-
we need to.
I'm just wondering where the true weaknesses are, you know,
Yes.
what is the real problem that we're trying to fix, or whatever.
So I think this definition, and I will say contractor-based facilities just as a phrase. I think that came into existence because our code allowed it to come into existence, right?
But I think we were unclear about.
No, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, okay,
So our code wasn't super clear
right,
on how these should be defined.
yeah, what that is.
And so there is a need to have broad, like better definitions in our code. Do we do it this way, or do we just update our definitions, right?
Well, question then.
Yeah.
Technical question, do we have to update our definitions by one definition at a time and have the voters vote on each single definition, or can we just update the definition section?
One at a time, one at a time. Yeah, gotta be. But we do need to do that, you know, that was a problem with the Base Hill Road. It was a contractor bay, but it came down to definition as to uses. That's what it boiled down to, uses, and that's why I went to CBA.
Distribution.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they argued that it wasn't a service, or service wasn't allowed there. So we need to beef up our definitions of service establishment, and we need to clarify, because we use just service, and then we use service establishment in different areas in their zoning. We'll just clarify that. Yeah, personal service too.
First order is.
So, yeah, we need to just clarify that and some of the other definitions. I think Victoria had some definitions of, I don't know if I have them here, but they're on contractor.
Yes,
You know,
and that's on this.
that's in this one
it's in our
too?
packet. But.
Well, that's the same that you had before.
Here's the proposal, okay? Because I'm not clear what the problem is that this is solving for us, maybe if we went into finer detail and worked on either establishing or more improving our definition of certain words, and the ones that Mark and I were kicking around were what service establishment and professional service business, those were two that seem to keep rearing their ugly heads in our lives. And I don't know if it's necessary to define contractor structural services, but if we do, then I think it makes sense to have sort of two levels as is shown
Like light
here.
construction and heavy construction.
Pretty
type of
much,
thing.
yeah, that
One has
idea.
the equipment we talked about in
One
our
has the
meeting
heavy
before.
equipment, the
Yeah.
other is
The other is very,
smaller, so,
different.
yeah.
And right, the service ones we do have to define as well, but we don't have professional service business in our zoning anymore, do we?
No, we do not.
We don't, but we do have service establishment and we have service. And yeah, we do have to define that, and we have wanna move on to that? Wanna let this one go for a while?
So, yeah, I think maybe, there's a couple of routes we can take. We can do this or beef up our definitions, because again, you can do this now. You can, without this definition, you become a planning board with a proposal, and you could do this. So I think if we beef up our definitions, that would maybe alleviate the need to do that.
So maybe the problem that this is working to solve is which, you said this before, which zone this kind of
Right,
activity would be taking place in. And then maybe the question is, do we currently have this in the proper zones? Is there?
Right, yeah.
Okay, because we currently.
And we need the
really allow
definition
this.
for that, but if we do that, we need a definition to define it, if we're gonna do that, because right now, we do have several areas that have these, one of them right down here and here around, so without the definition in there and without being determined which zone it is in, people could come and petition our board to say, well, you know, you've allowed it over here, 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 and here, so we should be able to do it there, and they'd probably beat us in court. But if it's in our zoning, defining it and where it can go, then
It's nice to have a mixed use definition. A lot of codes will have a definition for any variation of mixed use. So if we want to define mixed use, it can't hurt. It can't hurt.
No.
It might be unnecessary, but it can't hurt.
and it could go under the special exception part of it,
Yeah.
you know, the zoning, you know, in whatever zone it's in, it can be as a special exception mixed use. gives it a little bit more, scrutiny. It's going in there. So, yeah, maybe we can think about wording on that and use it as a definition probably, or as a new definition, the mixed use development. But we probably ought to move on to other definitions and think about that. Anybody? Nobody?
Yeah,
Then we will
sounds
move
good.
on.
Let's go for it.
Okay, let's move on to the service establishment. We have any establishment whose primary activity is a provision of assistance as opposed to providing a product or tangible commodity. And I had a small interpretation or a little addition to that, which about is the same thing, but it says a service establishment provides a skilled service, personal labor, or expertise as opposed to providing a product or tangible commodity. That covers them all. That covers licensed people, that covers plumber, that covers all the professional people. Whether they do a service, like whether it's dog sitting or whatever the professional thing is that they're doing, it covers them all. And it's a service.
Yeah, for me, the light bulb moment was not providing a product or a tangible.
Yeah,
commodity.
and that's what it is, yeah. Yeah, and it's just provide a skilled service, personal labor, or expertise as opposed to.
Can you read your definition again?
Yeah, the definition is a service establishment provides a skilled service, personal labor, or expertise as opposed to providing a product or a tangible commodity.
Automobile detail,
On a what?
automobile detail.
Detailing. That might be a service because we have
It's labor.
specifically, we have,
It's not a product.
yeah.
You don't need a license.
It probably would be, they aren't working on engines and that type of stuff. It's not a garage, because we have a gas station garage facilities in our zoning. If it was too close to that, then they'd have to fall into that category. But detailing probably isn't. It's probably under a service.
Okay, but it's being hard, not a new.
Right, yeah, it would be a service. And if it fit in whatever zone, it's going in or wherever things going, but. So, you want to use that definition then?
Yeah, I like that.
What else does that bring us to?
And then we can do away with professional service business.
Yeah, let's do away with that because it covers everybody
Covers, yeah.
licensed and everything.
Thank you, Reverend.
Okay, so we decided to define service establishment. And we decided that the definition on service establishment would be a service establishment provides a skilled service, personal labor, or expertise as opposed to providing a product or a tangible commodity.
Could you just give me that?
I will. I'll give it to you right now. Yeah, because
Professional services.
we aren't doing that because that covers,
Okay, so
that
this is.
the license part of it covers all of that.
I got it.
And we also need to go into the zoning, probably when we're gonna do this definition thing, and just probably any place where it mentions service or service staff, change it all to service establishment, I think would probably be better. And then that's one definition for everything, because we mentioned just straight service, and I think we have personal service in there too. We do. But we probably ought to just change them all to service establishment,
Yeah,
and then we have a definition.
the key difference there is personal service is more like beauty products, hair,
Yeah.
nails, that kind of stuff, service establishment.
But they still aren't, providing anything, any product or anything like that. They are,
Yep,
it's a service.
Yep.
I would think that they would fall underneath that.
I think so, yeah, yeah, we'll
So we need,
try to poke holes in it, and if we can't, then this will be good.
where does that bring us up to now? Let's see,
It's one little.
yeah,
Sorry,
go ahead,
back
Richard.
under those, under the service establishment, if you're talking about a beautician or podiatrist or something like that, they're gonna have product in there to sell. Also,
But they don't produce it.
no, but it's because.
Retail
it's
sales.
not a- It's a retail service.
Now, would that be an accessory use? If you're a beautician?
I'm not sure.
It could be, and a case by the planning board, if they were planning on selling something and their main business was gonna be selling those things and their little side business was putting beauty aids on a person, that's a whole different story. But if their side part of it was, like he's talking about accessory, selling just products that they use there, and their main business was beauty aids, applying them to people, then it's different. We find that out at the site plan.
And it still has to be allowed within that zone,
Yeah.
so.
So,
and-
so. We have two definitions that pertain to services, okay, one is from personal service shop or service establishment. And the second one is retail sales, comma, services, so we gotta do it.
Yeah, so we need to put service establishments after that retail
That
sales.
comma services.
Yeah, it will. So we need to just add service establishments after the retail sales. As a separate use, or actually maybe even a separate item on there, but that's what it means in those areas.
I think that was intended to be retail sales and services, but that still doesn't quite,
Yeah,
that still doesn't quite make sense.
so
No.
maybe we take the word services off that one.
Please.
Yeah, and add in,
And then stick with professional service shop or service establishment, figuring that covers what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's great.
and there are a couple other places in zoning that has that same type of thing, retail and sales and service.
And again, we'll look at this.
We'll look at it all. Yeah,
Yeah, we're gonna dig into. RSA's and just make sure that this is good legally, but.
Yep.
For now, it sounds.
okay.
And we were so lucky last time with all our zoning changes, we're gonna try to go beyond, what was it, 13 or 14 this time?
I know it. Well,
We're gonna get pushback from the.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, select board.
what are you
You
gonna
gotta clean them up.
Yeah.
like I said.
Yeah,
Not
it has to be done.
zones, this, it's much easier to think
No.
about if we're not doing
No, we
descriptions
aren't.
of
Yeah.
huge tracts of lands.
Right.
And it has to be done. Just for us and for the app. Brings us to multi-tenant. And the fact that we have no real authority to approve multi-tenant applications like we've been doing for the past really 35 years. You know, the statute only gives us authority to approve or not approve site plans and nothing else. And we did get a letter, this is a copy of that letter we got from our attorney probably 6 months ago or something like that. Saying the same thing that, hey, you guys, we don't think that you should be doing that, and he's right. And the way, I think. That under the staff comments, it says staff proposes the following. Multi-tenant applications are phased out immediately. We could make also start phasing them out on January 1st, 2025, either one. But yeah, either one.
It's good.
Okay, and then number two, any new tenant moving into a multi-tenant space will be reviewed administratively through the planning department to determine if there is a change of use. Number three, if the new tenant is a change of use, the planning board will see that tenant at a regularly scheduled meeting and determine if site plan review is necessary. If no site plan review is necessary, the applicant will be informed that no planning board approval is required. So that's a pretty good way to handle it, I think, anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it allows us to look at the entire site plan and say, okay, this new use is gonna generate 1 million cars and we need to really
Yeah.
sort of revamp that.
Yeah, if it's a different use and sending it to the planning board, if they say it's a different use, the planning board can say, well, no, we don't think it's a different use and do it that way, but at least it's reviewed before it gets to the planning board. And if it's a no-brainer, then it's a no-brainer, they can do it. So I think it's a good way to handle it. And I don't know exactly if we need a motion just to stop.
Well, if we do also move, that we accept the staff's recommendations.
Except what? Oh, except staff. Okay, let's have a motion to immediately phase out the multi-tenant application.
So moved.
Make it a couple, whatever.
And go ahead, Richard. Richard has something to say. I know you made a motion, but nobody seconded it.
Just that if we eliminate the number one, that we still receive from the planning
Staff,
board
right,
staff,
Yep.
what was done, what was presented and what was done, or what the reason for it not coming before us.
Yep, good point. Yep, that staff just sends the board a memo as to who came in and what and why they determined.
Which you'd be doing anyway, you'd be preparing them
No.
anyway, right, for the file.
Yeah, but not.
But not to the board.
They're not.
If they
bringing
just
it to
send
the
out as
board.
an email is what you're saying, right?
Yeah,
That's-
Just
I would like to have us receive what was presented. And what their decision was and based on what And for what reason they, we decided that we didn't need to see it.
That's
all.
fine, if you guys wanna do that, I will say we do have administrative processes that you guys don't see now, so this would be a good against the grain, but I don't.
We're kind of charged with oversight too. are we not?
Oh, we are, yeah, definitely are. We well within our right to do
We do those. I'm thinking more along the lines of like our permits that don't require, planning board, we don't need those.
that. Yep, but the,
I don't, yeah.
like the sign permits and that type of stuff, you guys do the sign permits now, the board used to do them here.
Yeah.
Now we designated you guys to do it, so we do. And I think, home occupation, I think you guys see here, they'll see those are there. So, yeah, there are a few things like that, and this will fall into that category there. But, Richard has a point there, and I agree with his point that it would be great just to bring a memo to the board, so the board won't be caught off guard if somebody comes in and says, well, these guys didn't blah, 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 and.
Yeah.
board already knows about it. So let's do that. So getting back to the motion. Rick, yeah, Richard.
Where are we now?
We're looking for a motion to immediately phase out multi-tenant
So
applications since
moved.
we don't have the authority to do it. Okay, motion by Michael York to phase out our multi-tenant applications, seconded by Brandon. Is there any further discussion? Then all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, so that's through there. And the attorney, as I remember before, he said that, and he was correct, that the planning board has the authority to decide who needs to come in for an application, who needs to submit a site plan and who doesn't, and that's taken care of in there, so even though we don't approve the multi-tenant ones there, they could come in there here if they need to anyways, and the planning board can decide whether they, as it says here, whether they need to come in for a full site plan or not. And it would be, and at some time in the future, the planning board could decide whether they want to do a minor site plan as opposed to a major site plan. If we have a bunch of those, they could handle that way. It's still a site plan, not a multi-tenant. But for now, we got the motion to phase it out, so we're gonna phase that out. And then let's have a motion to accept. Let's have a motion to accept the proposal by the staff regarding as to how they're gonna handle the multi-tenants coming into the office. And it's written right out here, number 2 and 3. I can read them through, but I already did. I think everybody's okay with that. With the addition that any multi-tenant that the staff makes a decision on is a memo comes out to the planning board as to what they did and to who it was.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Richard to do that. Is there a second? Seconded by Michael York. Is there any further discussion?
Yes,
Okay,
okay, the staff makes a decision. And we get the memo, we disagree with the decision. What happens then?
then the planning board can have the staff contact the applicant. And whatever the decision was, whether the applicant wasn't supposed to have that according to the planning board, or we're supposed to, whatever it was, they have them come into the planning board. That's how it would be handled.
And also at the end of the day, like. We don't have planning board power, so it's like, is this person going by the approved site plan? Like, does everything meet those standards?
Yeah, if that approved site plan changes anyway, in fact.
Yeah.
Like even change use.
Yeah.
That's the mayor, so.
Yeah. And anybody anyways that comes before our staff and they're upset with the decision staff made, they can always come to a planning board meeting anyway and address the board regardless. And the board will decide what happens. So let's keep it over there.
That is, what,
Another tenant. Yeah, okay. But,
Have to vote.
oh, we didn't vote on that?
No, we didn't vote on it.
No, because he interrupted.
Oh, okay. No,
As usual.
I'm glad you reminded me. Thank God I've gone right by that one. So. Thank you, Steve. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed. Okay, so we're gonna go by the staff recommendations. Staff's gonna handle multi-tenants from this point on. Great, thank you.
We'll try to have those memos out, within a few days. Depending on workload, it should be pretty quick.
Yep, that's fine. I think that'll work out good. Mark, go ahead.
So you'll send those memos out as as they occur.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that'd be fine, like in an email.
That, well, we could also put them in the package.
However you wanna do it, however you guys wanna do it, we can leave it up to them, right?
Packets.
It doesn't matter, board doesn't need to, as long as we get the information, we don't care.
If we do it one way you guys don't like it, just let us know.
Well, I just don't know, from Steve's point, right, if there's a timing issue,
Yeah,
we like to be efficient in getting back to the
Yeah, they
applicant.
probably wouldn't be since they didn't submit an application, so there would be no clock issue, a RSA clock issue, but. For the
Yeah,
applicant, they
not
might
just
just,
from them saying, go ahead, and then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, we're looking at it, it's like,
yeah.
oh, yeah, yeah,
What's
yeah, right,
do that for?
yeah.
Yeah, at worst, they'll be out with the packet, but. Yeah. So you'll probably see them a week in advance of any meeting.
And when you're meeting with the applicants anyways, you can just tell them that, this is gonna, contingent upon the planning board not having a problem with it.
I think that's a better way.
That's good.
Yes. Brings us to site plan review, planning board training,
So I bumped that to the next meeting,
okay?
because I thought that this was gonna go a lot longer. And there's more stuff I wanna add to the training, so. Yeah,
So you're gonna train, right? Or you're gonna, you just give us, what's that all about?
it's like a PowerPoint presentation.
Oh, okay. All right,
Reminder of like what the board is, what the board does.
Mhm.
Just, RSA parameters, things like that.
Okay, all right,
Planning board 101.
have it on
Essentially.
our next meeting.
We don't wanna give you guys your own.
No, we don't want to be open. So, anybody else have anything for the meeting?
I learned by listening.
Just a question. Business that I mentioned to you 2 days ago, was it Donna's thing? What did you do with it?
I was waiting to see the board here.
Pardon me?
I was waiting to see what decision we make tonight.
Okay, but she's running her business there now without any approval.
Is it like that?
Oh, the one next to affordable moving.
Yeah.
That
I
was,
saw that there the other day.
so I need to sign and send her sign permits as well as the form for tenant. Before,
Won't be multi-tenant after tonight.
So she comes, so yeah, I guess when you send her this out, yeah, we can actually let her know.
So rightly, she should not be in business.
It sounds like by rights, it sounds like someone moved in there and is doing business and they haven't been approved by the board by the sounds of it, right?
Yeah, well, that's the same.
And that's not the first time that's happened. It happens a lot of
And
times.
it won't be the
And-
last, that's right.
And it's usually a code enforcement issue and the
we are
board,
talking. Say that.
yeah, you know about it and I'm sure that you'll get her into the board here and unless it's handled as a multi-tenant, which maybe you won't. We'll get a memo on that, I'm sure.
And there's no site plan, so.
Adam and Stephanie,
I don't know
are
whether
they
you
check on
pick that whole
Tom's
building?
transportation?
No,
Don't think so.
just that one spot by the locks.
But
I don't know.
whenever that gets figured out.
Affordable moving is still there. Yeah. Everywhere when I went by.
Yeah, because we went by there tonight, I was like, oh, look at that.
No.
But his sign is all gone.
Yeah.
But his
It's
big
just light.
is there.
Exactly, that's
So I
what
was like,
you gotta hand it off to Mike and Mike pays for it.
Yeah, he's a building inspector.
But, and that's how it's always been, and again, it's
Just the
not the end of the
Right.
world when that happens.
Yeah.
Anything else for the meeting?
Nope.
If not, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Brad.
Second.
Is there a second? Okay, second by Charlie. All those in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We are officially adjourned.
26.
Are you 27?